888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. So far, Biden has not changed the policy that requires so-called migrants traveling from South America or Central America to apply for asylum in the first country that's safe, which means there are 60,000 people in Mexico who have to apply for asylum, and that policy has not been changed. I suspect Mr. Biden does not want a whole bunch of illegal aliens on the border. That might suggest that the measures that Donald Trump took were effective. We can't have that. A Democrat senator from Montana, Senator John Tester, is urging the Biden administration to reconsider his first act as president, which was to pass that executive order killing the Keystone XL pipeline. Democrats are voting on whether to expel Marjorie Taylor Greene from her committee assignments. I've told you about some other people who ought to be expelled if you apply the Marjorie Taylor Greene standard. I've got a few more for you. But first, you recall, of course, the Capitol riots, January 6th. AOC was live via Facebook describing what was happening.
Like, I'm here, and the bathroom door starts going like this. Like, the bathroom door's behind me, or rather in front of me, and I'm like this, and the door hinges right here. And I just hear, "Where is she?"
She's describing what happened.
Where is she? And this was the moment where I thought everything was over. And the weird thing about moments like these is that you lose all sense of time.
Okay, and she goes on to talk about what happened. Turns out that she wasn't in the Capitol building at all at the time, hadn't been there for at least an hour, according to Red State, before the Capitol police officer knocked on her door. She was in the Cannon House office building, which is a bit of a walk, at least 10 minutes. And according to another representative whose office was 2 doors down from AOC's, the truth is that, quote, insurrectionists never stormed their hallway, end of quote. So AOC appears to be exaggerating, if not...
In retrospect, maybe it was 4 seconds. Maybe it was 5 seconds. Maybe it was 10 seconds. Maybe it was 1 second. I don't know. It felt like my brain was able to have so many thoughts.
My brain was able to have so many thoughts. How many thoughts?
In that moment, between these screams and these yells of, "Where is she? Where is she?"
And she knew at that point it was over.
And so I go down and I thought I was going to die.
She said rioters entered her office, forcing her to take refuge inside the bathroom. Turns out, the person who came to her office was a Capitol Hill police officer. But she said when the officer asked for help, she said he didn't feel right.
And I had a lot of thoughts. You have a lot of thoughts, I think, when you're in a situation like that. And like also one of those thoughts that I had was, I just happened to, be a spiritual person and be raised in that context. And I really just felt like, if this is the plan for me, then people will be able to take it from here.
Spiritual person? He didn't say God, though. According to Red State, quote, so her near-death experience was an overreaction to a Capitol police officer knocking on her door to direct her to another building, the Longworth building, where she then stayed in the office of Representative Katie Porter, a Democrat from California. Instead of thanking the officer, she paints him somehow as a possible danger of which to be afraid. The Capitol Police were likely trying to evacuate the building quickly. It's possible the officer was focused on getting people out quickly and didn't have time for all of the niceties. End of quote.
I had a lot of thoughts, but that was the thought that I had about.
She had a lot of thoughts, but that was a particular thought that she had at the time. Quote, according to Representative Nancy Mace, Republican, South Carolina, who has an office in the same hall as AOC, 2 doors away, there were never any rioters in their hall, so there were never any physical danger from rioters coming in at that point.
You all. I felt that if this was the journey that my life was taking, that I felt that things were going to be okay.
Now, I'm not saying what happened on January 6th wasn't serious. It was very serious. But honestly, she wasn't even in the building. And when she was told that the person yelling at her, where is she, was a Capitol Hill police officer, she said this.
There was no partner, was not yelling, Capitol Police, etc., etc.
Etc., etc.
But then it did.
Capitol Hill Police, etc., etc.
Didn't feel right.
He just didn't feel right. I thought he was a terrorist. I could have been an insurrectionist.
Because he was looking at me with a tremendous amount of anger.
I would think a lot of people probably look at her that way.
And hostility.
I'm used to it.
And things weren't adding up. Like, there was no partner there.
Things weren't adding up. There was no partner there.
And no one was yelling. He wasn't yelling like, this is Capitol Police, this is Capitol Police. And he was looking at me in all of this anger and hostility. And at first, in my brain and in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I just came.
In my brain and in my mind, not to get the two confused.
From this super intense experience just now, maybe I'm reading into this, right?
Okay, I can't take anymore. Raymond Arroyo.
Aside from The Crown or maybe Hamilton, nobody has seen any of this stuff, so I'm not even going to waste time with it.
Maybe Andrew Cuomo can give her his Emmy.
But this is what happens to award shows when you shut down an economy for a year. There are no more communal experiences and no shared movie touch zones. But there was one snub that we have to rectify before the Emmys and the Oscars are announced. And it's this Instagram show that may have gotten more viewers than all those Netflix nominees for Best Lead Actor in a Political Drama. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in Insurrection Day is going to be hard to beat.
These yells of these men, or just a man, just one man, going, where is she? Where is she? I see this white man in a black beanie bump, just like open the door of my personal office and yell again, where is she? I'm like, I don't know, so deeply rattled. I'm still processing the end of my life when I come out. And I come out, and this man is a Capitol Police officer.
A police officer. Laura, the drama never ends over this day. This entire miniseries is designed to keep this Capitol siege in the forefront of people's minds, ratchet up impeachment pressure. That's the intention here. And the truth is, Ocasio-Cortez was in no danger at all on January 6th. The rioters broke into the Capitol, or she was all the way at the Cannon office building. That's like 2 blocks away. Look at the map. None of this makes sense. And she once tweeted, the whole point of protesting is to make people uncomfortable. But when it makes her uncomfortable, it's a problem.
Let's not be melodramatic.
I am white, so I apologize.
When we come back, Marjorie Taylor Greene may lose her committee assignments. Let's talk about somebody else who might not deserve his committee assignments. I am Larry Elder, 888-971-SAG. Come on, join the fun.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show. You guys are not going to believe what is going on in Illinois right now. Shocking that I have to say that. It's that bad, you guys. It's beyond your wildest belief.
I'm only like peripherally aware of this, so please go ahead.
So recently, the Illinois State Board of Education approved this new rule for statewide curriculum mandates called the Culturally Responsive Teaching and Leading Standards. And right now, it's pending before the Illinois General Assembly and will be voted on February 16th to put into all curriculum for K through 12 schools in Illinois. But essentially, it's a new law that forces teachers to, in their words, embrace and encourage progressive viewpoints and perspectives. That's, fancy buzzwords, but what does that actually mean? Essentially, teachers are mandated by law to discuss current political controversies in class. They have to organize what they call action civics, which are field trips, student protests, lobbying expeditions on behalf of causes like gun control or the Green New Deal. They have to admit that there's unlimited numbers of genders and prioritize representation in the classroom.
This is in a state legislative bill.
And they're doing everything they can to bring this to the national level and essentially implement it as part of Common Core for all public schools nationwide. This is in addition to critical race theory, which is already a problem in Chicago.
Oh, it's terrible.
If you guys aren't familiar with the 1619 Project from the New York Times, that's among the most woke curriculum you could possibly imagine, but that's already been implemented to all Chicago public schools. So this is in addition to that reality.
This is statewide stuff, though.
And this would be statewide for the state of Illinois.
214. This would be in District 211. This would be all across the state of Illinois.
And you might ask, what happens if a teacher, a bold, brave teacher who's rational, says no? They get their teaching license taken away.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
What do we need to know about COVID that we're not hearing? What is your perspective on it right now? Because there's never been anything so confusing and so strange in my lifetime.
Well, Eric, I agree with you. And this is politics and medicine has no place at all. And unfortunately, the information, the freedom of information for patients so they can make their choices is just not out there. And so the very simple solutions that people should know as a public health editorial is prevention is very important that you can do today. Don't wait for the virus. Don't wait to get the positive test. Just start today with prevention. And there's 5 supplements you can take. There's 5 lifestyle changes that you can do for prevention. Unfortunately, it's not told, but you know what? It works. And we started back in March. We had people make sure they elevate their own immune system by 3 key nutrients. And when they increase their vitamin D levels, they increase their zinc levels, they increase their glutathione levels and vitamin C levels, guess what? These people are more resistant and resilient to all viruses, including COVID. So if they did get the case, it would be reversed quickly, or they didn't get it at all. You know how much this cost? The average person, if the government would have given everybody a $100 kit, I believe that a lot of lives would have been saved with the word prevention. We don't hear that anywhere.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
I often wonder if people call the Larry Elder Show now at 888-971-SAGE. That's 888-971-7243. El Dorado's let Larry know what's on your mind.
This failed with all your facts and figures. Nothing but the facts like Jack Webb. But anyway, why didn't you and your Messiah, Trump, go over to the remembrance of the March on Washington and say, hi, I'm Larry Elder, and these are my views on race and this, that, the other, and I support Trump. Why didn't you and Trump go over there and try to unify black people into believing in this country again? I don't think you had the, as they say, cojones to do that. You have a nice evening, Mr. Elder. And be true to your constituents, which are very lighter than I am. Have a nice evening.
Wow. Not too racist. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. Not quite sure I understand what the complaint is. The complaint is I wasn't in the Capitol giving a speech on how to unite black people with President Trump. What does that even mean? What are you even saying? You know, it would be easier if you called me during the 3 hours we have the show live so we can have a conversation, because I have no idea what the hell you're saying. I support President Trump. I campaigned with him and for him in 2016. I have a job. I can be in two places at once. I'm not quite sure what exactly it is you're asking me to do. Do you believe I have the power to give a speech and bring the country together? If that's what you believe, then why are you so antagonistic towards me? And if you believe I have something to say that would bring the country together, why aren't you encouraging me? I'm not quite sure what the complaint was here. I guess if I had been there, there would have been one more black protester, and then when they had the thought experiment about what would have happened if most of those protesters had been black, it would have been a little more realistic. Is that what you're saying? All right, let's get back to this. AOC claims that she was having a near-death experience, exaggerated what happened. And what is it about these Democrats that tend to do that? Remember when Hillary said that she was under sniper attack in Bosnia? Turns out there was a pants-on-fire liar when it was fact-checked. And she claimed that she was in New York on 9/11. Turns out she wasn't in New York on 9/11. She even said so in her book. She wasn't in New York on 9/11. Said on 9/11, Chelsea was blocks away having a jog. And Chelsea wrote that she was never anywhere near there and wasn't having a jog. So, plenty of victims in the world. We need to make up new ones. There I was. Really? What's the point? Remember this?
There's an element where, people are going to have to start paying.
Keep in mind, this is a woman who has a degree in economics from Boston University. Hello, Boston University.
There's an element where, people are going to have to start paying their fair share in taxes.
Do you have a specific on the tax rate?
You know, you look at our tax rates back in the 60s, and when you have a progressive tax rate system, your tax rate, let's say from $0 to $75,000 may be 10% or 15%, etc. But once you get to like the tippy tops, on your $10 millionth dollar.
Did she say tippy tops? I think she did say that. It's an economic term. She probably learned that at BU.
On your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as
at the very tippy top. Did she say? Yeah. I think so.
But once you get to like the tippy tops,
I think that's a category. It's called tippy tops. Yeah, I think Milton Friedman first discovered that. Adam Smith was the first one to mention the tippy tops, and then of course others have followed up in their scholarship. So.
Tops.
Very tippy tops.
Etc. But once you get to like the tippy tops, on your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%.
Now, I want to play this part of it one more time. Bear with me. I want to make a point.
There's an element where, people are going to have to start paying their fair share in taxes.
Yeah. Do you have a specific
their fair share in taxes?
The tax rate?
Top 1% pay 39% of all the federal income taxes, while getting about 20% of our nation's income. So,
You know, you look at our tax rates back in the 60s.
You hear that? You look at our tax rate back in the 60s, and they were much higher. Okay. I think I mentioned this. I was on, believe it was CNN, and I mentioned that, must have been Fox, that in 1900 at all three levels, federal, state, and local, all three levels, government took less than 10% from the American people. I got a fact check call. What? Where'd you get that source? Gave them a source. And they were flabbergasted. They had no idea in 1900, in fact, less than 10%, all three levels, federal, state, and local. Right now, it's about 32%, 35%, depending on how you measure it. Even at the tippy tops. And if you add the cost of these mandates that you are obliged to do, if you're running a factory and OSHA tells you to do this and this and this, you don't want to do it, or you want to do it in a less expensive way, if that's a cost, if you evaluate that, and government, all three levels now takes 50% from the American people. So AOC wants to go back into 1960 when government had a very high tax rate. Why don't we go back to 1900? Why 1960? What's so beautiful about that? Those are the very tippy tip.
And when you have a progressive tax rate system, your tax rate, let's say from $0 to $75,000 may be 10% or 15%, etc. But once you get to like the tippy tops.
Tom Sowell on AOC and taxes.
Those on the left often act as if human beings are just like inert blocks of wood or like chess pieces that you can move around on the chessboard to put wherever you want to carry out some grand design. But of course, people react to these things. In the early 20s, the tax rate on the top income was 73%. And the people making over $100,000 paid something like 30% of all taxes. By the end of the decade, the tax rate on the top had been cut to 24%. People making over $100,000 now paid 65% of all taxes. And the reason is quite simple, that when you have the tax rate at 73%, people simply don't pay it. They put their money into tax-exempt securities and arrange their financial affairs. So what we're really talking about, do you want a symbolic high tax rate on the high-income people to win votes politically, which the rich themselves are not going to pay? Or do you really want more tax revenue coming into the government?
I don't know. I tend to think that Thomas Sowell's idea about taxes is going to be a little more persuasive than AOC, but I could be wrong. I got a feeling that Tom Sowell probably knows how to operate a garbage disposal, I'll tell you that. Now this you can't even make up. CNN's Alison Camerata used the term South African variant for the coronavirus strain. South African, isn't that
I should just point out that even though the virus in this particular variant was first described in South Africa, it actually might not have even emanated from South Africa. So it's inappropriate to call it the South African variant. It's better just to call it by its name, 501YV2. And we now know that's in about 31 countries.
Now, she had called it South African.
No, you're right. Absolutely. You're right. And I don't mean to disparage South Africa.
I didn't mean to disparage South Africa. I love South Africa. My best friends live in South Africa.
A handy short.
It was a handy short. I wasn't trying to be racist.
No, you're right. Absolutely. I mean, you're right. And I don't mean to disparage South Africa. It's just a handy shorthand.
If Trump said that, third impeachment.
But I know that doctors don't like that when we give a geographic origin because we don't know that to be true. But in terms of the 501YV2, I hope.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Numbers matter. And think about the fact that they always tout the popular vote as opposed to the Electoral College. That's why every vote matters. Even if you're in California, you like yourself, Victor, in Maryland, every single vote matters. And this is why you never give up. It's not an excuse, but you're absolutely right from the historical perspective. Politics is cyclical. It truly is cyclical. You know, you get a Reagan because of a Carter. That's absolutely true. You get a Donald Trump because of what? Because of the betrayal of the American people by both sides of the political aisle. So the idea that simply because they managed to do what they did in November, that's it, we're done? Absolutely not. Think about one thing and one thing alone. How did they treat Donald Trump when he came down those escalators? And I don't mean just the left. I don't mean the late night talk show hosts, the quote unquote comedians. I mean the right, the establishment. Do you remember? And what happened? He trounced them all. Even after the Billy Bush tape, he was a force of nature. That's the attitude I want to see in all Americans. Be more like Donald Trump. Never, ever give up. Because that's what being an American is to me.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Do you expect there will be tax hikes, which would be ruinous with the economy as it is?
I do. I guess I'm getting a bit pessimistic about all this, because I do think there's a sense within the Democratic Party right now that this is really their only opportunity to go big or go home over the next 2 years. I mean, technically they'll get 2 or 3 bites at the reconciliation apple if you look at how this might play out. But I think they feel like they have, 1 or 2 big swings here, and they have to swing for the fences in order to have any hope of winning in the midterm and in 2022. And again, I just think it would be a mistake to interpret the results of the November election as giving them a sweeping mandate for progressive reform. If anything, I think the verdict that the country delivered is that it wants a more moderate path forward. We made incredible gains in the House. Republicans did. There was a lot of split ticket voters who may have voted for Biden, but still voted for a Republican senator or a Republican congressman or congresswoman lower on down the ballot. And so I think the country is sending the signal that we don't want a radical shift in a different direction. Americans need to work not only as a matter of providing for their family, but as a matter of feeling connected to their community, which is why some of these executive orders, particularly killing the Keystone Pipeline, which is going to cost Wisconsin 2,000 jobs. And these are union jobs, high-paying jobs that make you way more than $15 an hour. It is just so counterproductive.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Albert Mohler for Townhall.com. The American experiment is founded upon a presupposition, a prior commitment to an ordered liberty, an established order. That means policies. It means a covenant. In our case, it means a constitution.
I should just point out that even though the virus in this particular variant was first described in South Africa, it actually might not have even emanated from South Africa. So it's inappropriate to call it the South African variant. It's better just to call it by its name, 501YV2. And we now know that's in about 31 countries.
No, you're right. Absolutely. I mean, you're right. And I don't mean to disparage South Africa. It's just a handy shorthand, but I know that
handy shorthand.
That doctors don't like that when we give a geographic origin, because we don't know that to be true. But in terms of the 501YV2, I hope, variant, is it resistant to the existing vaccines?
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. You see, they set the standard. Donald Trump burped. He got sued. Donald Trump's tie was too long. It was racist. Calling it the China virus, Wuhan virus, racist. Here you have a CNN host referring to this variant as the South African variant. Anybody call her racist? Anybody say that she should be canceled? Has Twitter shut down her account?
This is all happening at a time that we're starting to see a message shift here, because you're starting to hear the Republicans, especially Trump calling it the Wuhan or the Chinese coronavirus. They're looking for someone to blame.
Concern is growing this morning over an outbreak of a new SARS-like virus in China. At least 6 people have died from the Wuhan coronavirus. The Wuhan coronavirus. The Wuhan coronavirus.
The 34-year-old ophthalmologist diagnosed Saturday with the Wuhan coronavirus.
The Wuhan virus.
The Wuhan coronavirus.
The Wuhan coronavirus. What more can you tell us about the similarities or differences between SARS and the Wuhan coronavirus?
The Wuhan coronavirus.
The Wuhan coronavirus in China.
The Wuhan coronavirus.
The Wuhan coronavirus. And the Wuhan coronavirus.
Wuhan coronavirus.
Fears continue to grow over the outbreak of the Wuhan coronavirus.
Wuhan coronavirus.
The Wuhan coronavirus. The Wuhan coronavirus. We have new information about how the Wuhan coronavirus is spread.
Tying coronavirus to China and Chinese people isn't just a racist dog whistle. It's a whole racist orchestra.
Let's not
it's
be
a
melodramatic.
mighty racist bass tone.
I hear Stephen Miller in this foreign virus setting up
travel bans for the outside invasion of the disease.
Is this a game show?
That's not the way
Chinese coronavirus that they've been
that's
calling
not
it. The first U.S. case of Chinese coronavirus.
The Chinese coronavirus. This is coming as the Chinese coronavirus.
China's coronavirus outbreak.
China's coronavirus. Outbreak anxiety. The death toll nearly doubles in China's coronavirus outbreak. China's coronavirus.
Just how bad is China's coronavirus crisis?
China's coronavirus.
Barbaric. China's coronavirus outbreak.
China's coronavirus outbreak.
China's coronavirus.
China's coronavirus. China's coronavirus.
China's coronavirus.
Concerns about the China coronavirus.
It's going to come across to a lot of Americans as smacking of xenophobia, to use that kind of term.
Now, Associated Press headline, check this out. California coronavirus hospitalizations are plummeting. First sentence. Coronavirus infections and hospitalizations in California are plummeting. Weeks after it appeared, some hospitals were so overwhelmed they might have to start rationing care. State's top health officials say today, if trends continue by early March, the number of hospital patients will fall by half. When cases were surging at an unprecedented rate in early December, state officials used plunging intensive care unit capacities to issue stay-at-home orders for most of California. Officials are shocked. This is from the Daily Mail. Headline, why are COVID cases plummeting? New infections have fallen 45% in the U.S. and 30% globally in the past 3 weeks. But experts say vaccine is not the main driver because only 8% of Americans and 13% of people worldwide have received their first dose. Now, reading further down, quote, officials say the drop is likely due to a higher number of people who've had the virus than official counts suggest. End of quote. Hello? How many times have we talked about this with Dr. Carey and Dr. Barkey? Far more people have had it than the people are saying. Therefore, the rate of lethality is far lower than people are saying because you have to know how many people have it first. And no idea. Shocked. Shocked. Remember what Trump said?
Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, a lot of people think that goes away in April.
He was crazy insane. We're talking about that in just a second. Now, some say there might be 100 million folks struggling with some kind of pain. That sounds like you. Are you suffering from back, shoulder, neck, hip, foot, knee pain from exercise, or just getting older? If that sounds like you, consider ordering the 3-week Quick Start, discounted to only $19.95. The doctors who formulated it selected the 4 best 100% drug-free ingredients to deal with pain from a different metabolic pathway. It's only $19.95. That's less than $1 a day to see if we can get you out of pain. ReliefFactor.com. ReliefFactor.com. 800-500-8384. 800-500-8384.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. The Biden administration announced in their first week that the U.S. is rejoining the World Health Organization. But the WHO is a flawed group, one that has performed poorly while the world has struggled with COVID-19. Early on, the group was far too deferential to China, even parroting Beijing's early claim that the virus could not be transmitted between humans. Since then, an independent panel concluded that the WHO dithered in its response, waiting too long to declare an international emergency. All the while, the WHO has continued to block Taiwan's participation because of political objections from the Chinese government, despite the fact that the world has much to learn from Taiwan's exceptional response to the virus. Before rejoining the WHO, we should have demanded some accountability and reform from the group for the $400 million in taxpayer dollars we send to it each year. It looks like we'll keep on writing blank checks to the WHO, which they are more than happy to keep cashing. I'm Lan Hee Chen.
The Pepperdine School of Public Policy, America's unique graduate program for leaders. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
What we are heading towards will be one of the most violent decades in American history. Why? Massive wealth and income inequality is one reason, because of the lockdowns and because of leaders that do not care about the well-being of their subjects. A war on police officers and a war on law enforcement, and quite honestly, a war on the law in general. And also an unmanaged transition from the corporate boardroom industrial economy to the digital economy. When you have this much economic dislocation, when you have this much disruption, do not be surprised when murder rates and homicide rates skyrocket. New York City is becoming a place that is completely unrecognizable. Just some of my buddies in Chicago that I grew up with said they do not feel comfortable going to downtown Chicago. They feel their car will almost assuredly be carjacked, or whatever is in their car will be stolen. When I was in San Francisco, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, parked on the side of the street, nice part of San Francisco, everything we had in there completely and totally stolen. Windows smashed, all of our stuff stolen. Do not be surprised when civil society starts to unravel, when you attack every single core institution that keeps civil society together.
Well, hi, Larry. This is Marie. I first of all want to say this was not my idea, but I thought when I heard it earlier this morning that it was brilliant. If the GOP wants to cancel Marjorie Greene or take her off committee assignments, say sure, as soon as Adam Schiff is off every committee assignment that he has.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Marjorie Taylor Greene defended herself. The Democrats are preparing to, if they haven't done it already, I don't think they have they? Vote to strip her from her committee positions.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, my Democrat colleagues, Republican colleagues, my district back home in Georgia 14, to the American people, to my mom and dad, and my husband and my children. I've been here for 1 month and a day, and I've gotten to know part of my conference, my Republican colleagues, but not even all of them yet. I haven't gotten to know any of my Democrat colleagues, and I haven't had to have any conversations with any of you to tell you who I am and what I'm about. You only know me by how Media Matters, CNN, MSNBC, and the rest of the mainstream media is portraying me. What you don't know about me is that I'm a very proud wife of almost 25 years, that I'm a mother of 3 children, and I consider being a mother the greatest blessing of my life and the greatest thing that I'll ever achieve. I'm proudly the first person to graduate college in my family, making my parents very happy and proud. I'm also a very successful business owner. We've grown our company from 1 state to 11 states. I'm a very hard worker. I've always paid my taxes. I've never been arrested. I've never done drugs, but I've gotten a few speeding tickets in my day. What you need to know about me is I'm a very regular American, just like the people I represent in my district and most people across the country. I never ever considered to run for Congress or even get involved in politics. As a matter of fact, I wasn't a political person until I found a candidate that I really liked, and his name is Donald J. Trump when he ran for president. To me, he was someone I could relate to, someone that I enjoyed his plain talk, not the offensive things, but just the way he talked normally. And I thought, finally, maybe this is someone that will do something about the things that deeply bother me, like the fact that we're so deeply in debt that our country has murdered over 62 million people in the womb. The fact that our borders are open and some of my friends have had their children murdered by illegal aliens. Or perhaps that maybe we can stop sending our sons and daughters to fight in foreign wars and be used as the world's police, basically. Or maybe that our government would stand up for our American businesses and our American jobs and make the American people and the American taxpayers their focus. These are the things that I care about deeply. So when we elected President Trump, and then I started seeing things in the news that didn't make sense to me, like Russian collusion, which are conspiracy theories also, and have been proven so, these things bothered me deeply. And I realized, just watching CNN or Fox News, I may not find the truth. And so what I did is I started looking up things on the internet, asking questions like most people do every day. Use Google. And I stumbled across something, and this was at the end of 2017, called QAnon. Well, these posts were mainly about this Russian collusion information. A lot of it was some of what I would see on the news at night, and I got very interested in it. So I posted about it on Facebook, I read about it, I talked about it, I asked questions about it, and then more information came from it. But you see, here's the problem. Throughout 2018, because I was upset about things and didn't trust the government, really, because the people here weren't doing the things that I thought they should be doing for us, the things that I just told you I cared about. And I want you to know, a lot of Americans don't trust our government, and that's sad. The problem with that is, though, is I was allowed to believe things that weren't true, and I would ask questions about them and talk about them. And that is absolutely what I regret. Because if it weren't for the Facebook post and comments that I liked in 2018, I wouldn't be standing here today, and you couldn't point a finger and accuse me of anything wrong, because I've lived a very good life that I'm proud of, my family's proud of, my husband's proud of, my children are proud of, and that's what my district elected me for. So later in 2018, when I started finding misinformation, lies, things that were not true in these QAnon posts, I stopped believing it. And I want to tell you, any source, and I say this to everyone, any source of information that is a mix of truth and a mix of lies is dangerous, no matter what it is saying, what party it is helping, anything or any country it's about. It's dangerous. And these are the things that happen on the left and the right. And it is a true problem in our country. So I walked away from those things, and I decided I'm going to do what I've done all my life. I'm going to work hard and try to solve the problems that I'm upset about. So I started getting involved in politics. You see, school shootings are absolutely real. And every child that is lost, those families mourn it. I understand how terrible it is, because when I was 16 years old in 11th grade, my school was a gun-free school zone, and one of my schoolmates brought guns to school and took our entire school hostage. And that happened right down the hall from my classroom. I know the fear that David Hogg had that day. I know the fear that these kids have. And this is why, and I say this sincerely with all my heart, because I love our kids, every single one of your children, all of our children. I truly believe that children at school should never be left unprotected. I believe they should be just as protected as we were with 30,000 National Guardsmen. Our children are our future, and they're our most precious resource. I also want to tell you 9/11 absolutely happened. I remember that day crying all day long watching it on the news. And it's a tragedy for anyone to say it didn't happen. And so that I definitely want to tell you, I do not believe that it's fake. I also want to tell you that we've got to do better. You see, big media companies can take teeny tiny pieces of words that I've said, that you have said, any of us, and can portray us into someone that we're not.
More on this. Now, in 2020, hundreds of you, my listeners, took my advice and made the switch from your overpriced wireless carrier to Pure Talk. What rest are you waiting for? If you're with AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, your family could save over $800 a year just by switching to Pure Talk. Same great coverage because they use the same exact towers as one of those big customers, but they save you a fortune. I know because I'm a customer. By the way, Pure Talk is the top-rated wireless company by Consumer Affairs with the absolute best customer service team based right here in the country. Sound good? It gets better. Right now, get unlimited talk, text, and 6 gigs of data for just $30 a month. And if you go over data usage, they don't charge you for it. From your cell phone, dial pound 250, say Larry Elder, save 50% off your first month. That's dial pound 250, say Larry Elder, because Pure Talk is simply smarter wireless.
This is Lon Heechen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. The Biden administration announced in their first week that the U.S. is rejoining the World Health Organization. But the WHO is a flawed group, one that has performed poorly while the world has struggled with COVID-19. Early on, the group was far too deferential to China, even parroting Beijing's early claim that the virus could not be transmitted between humans. Since then, an independent panel concluded that the WHO dithered in its response, waiting too long to declare an international emergency. All the while, the WHO has continued to block Taiwan's participation because of political objections from the Chinese government, despite the fact that the world has much to learn from Taiwan's exceptional response to the virus. Before rejoining the WHO, we should have demanded some accountability and reform from the group for the $400 million in taxpayer dollars we send to it each year. It looks like we'll keep on writing blank checks to the WHO, which they are more than happy to keep cashing. I'm Lon Heechen.
The Pepperdine School of Public Policy, America's unique graduate program for leaders. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
What we are heading towards will be one of the most violent decades in American history. Why? Massive wealth and income inequality is one reason, because of the lockdowns and because of leaders that do not care about the well-being of their subjects. A war on police officers and a war on law enforcement, and quite honestly, a war on the law in general. And also an unmanaged
hello, ignorant deplorable. Don't you understand context is everything? When you tell an angry mob that you've assembled on Capitol Hill to march on the Capitol, you assembled them and you told them, we want you to stop the steal. You fired them up to a fevery pitch, and then you tell them to march on Congress and fight like hell. It's all about context.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com story. It's all about context.
When we have been attacked and when our ideals and fundamental values are being attacked, do we retreat or do we fight? I say we fight. And I intend to fight. I intend to fight for our ideals. I intend to fight.
Are you willing to stand together and fight for those people who are struggling? Are you willing to fight?
Because you don't get what you don't fight for. I am in this fight.
This is a fight for our country, for the oath we take to protect and defend the Constitution.
And we got to fight like hell, and we got to win the House, and we got to win the Senate. We have it deep in our souls, and we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Next hour, we're going to be talking about some of the other people who ought to be stripped of their committee assignments. Here's what Representative Andy Biggs, Republican from Arizona, said.
All of this was in the wash. It was baked in the vote. So if you're going to take Marjorie Taylor Greene off her committee, then you need to be looking at all the conspiracy theorists, all the hard left rhetoric that's come out, all the violent rhetoric that's come out. How about sleeping with the enemy and being on intel? How about spreading false hoaxes and rumors? All of that should basically foreclose those people if that's the standard. But this is a historic thing because they want the whole body to come in. Well, they know they control it, to start removing Republicans. And I'll tell you, Marjorie Taylor Greene, if this happens, will just be the start. They will go after a couple other people, then it'll be somebody else, and it will always move the goalposts because they don't want opposition, loud, strong people. And don't forget, Marjorie Taylor's a strong conservative voice for women, and they don't want that either.
Did you know that one of the persons who voted to impeach Trump twice used to be a federal district judge? Was impeached, I think was the first federal judge to be impeached in something like 100 years. Was impeached, was convicted by the Senate, thrown off the bench. This is after he was tried and found not guilty, played the race card. Turns out the 11th Circuit felt he fabricated evidence and recommended he be kicked off the bench. He ran for Congress, and now he's been serving in Florida for something like 14 years. I can't make this up.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Why can't there be an ad on Facebook for the recall of the governor of California? Which reminds me to remind you that you can go. We sent in ours yesterday, by the way. Just for the record. It said you had to sign in black or blue ink. So do you think my more purple-like ink will be okay for my fountain pen? Or will they disqualify it? We actually thought about that, my wife and I, when I signed it. They'll do anything to disqualify a ballot. The people who yell voter suppression don't seem to be all that concerned with regard to voter suppression and the recall. This man has ruined so many people's lives in the state of California that he holds a somewhat unique spot in American history as utterly destructive. So with the LA Times. These are forces of bad. They're forces of destruction. The LA Times defended Gascon, the district attorney of Los Angeles County. Not only endorsed, they're defending his policies. It's one thing they could endorse him because they'll always endorse a leftist, but now that they see what he's doing, do you know that other counties are not even referring cases to Los Angeles County? Because he has a soft spot, this George Soros-funded, truly evil man, has a soft spot for murderers because they don't care. You understand? The left doesn't care if you've murdered or if you've raped, if you've sold enough drugs to kill a village. They care about your color.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
2020 was the largest percentage increase in homicides in American history. Murder was up nearly 37% in a sample of 57 large and medium-sized cities. Based on preliminary estimates, at least 2,000 more Americans, most of them black, were killed in 2020 than in 2019. You would think that would be a heavy focus or primary focus for the ruling class media. The local murder increases in 2020 were as following: 95% in Milwaukee, 78% in Louisville, 74% in Seattle, 72% in Minneapolis, 62% in New Orleans, and 58% in Atlanta. A lot of people blame it just purely on the pandemic stress. Do you not remember the defund the police narrative that swept our country for months? And Minneapolis basically did defund their police. One of the reasons why some of the police officers in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol tragedy did not have lethal weapons is because some of them were disarmed by Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
We've seen the sausage machine from the inside. Okay. Your verdict on the first 15 days?
Full fail. Absolute, total, utter fail. Economically fail. In terms of PR, fail. Just a totally pathetic 2 weeks. The fact that Biden's big vaccine plan literally didn't exist. There's no COVID plan. He already said that that there's nothing they can do. So disaster there. Disaster on the Keystone Pipeline. His climate czar is John Kerry, who is literally like a cartoon character of a bad politician. He's a climate czar and has a private jet at the same time. But
it's okay. He said when he flew to Iceland to get the award, he said today, but somebody like me has to have a private jet. I'm going to use that excuse. If I get a private jet, I'm going to say, but someone like me has to have a private jet, Boris. Don't you agree?
He's so fancy, and he's achieved so much in his life. He's been such a high-achieving person. You know, after serving in Vietnam, and thanks for his service, buying someone else's medals to throw out, okay?
And then testifying against our nation and the Vietnam War in the Senate.
Being a totally useless senator, a horrible candidate for president, Iran's best friend is Secretary of State, can't even ride a bicycle normally.
Well, but hang on, Boris. He did marry up.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Manchin comes on last night and he says very reassuring things. He's not going to screw with the Byrd rule. $15 minimum wage is not in there. We're going to use reconciliation, but if it doesn't have bipartisan support, he's not voting for it. What do you make of that?
Well, I think Senator Manchin is sincere. I had an opportunity to have dinner with him last night, and he's a very honest guy, and he is genuine when he talks about his dedication to bipartisanship. That is a core issue for him, and he very much wants to restore the bipartisan nature of Congress in general and the Senate in particular. And so I'm inclined to take him at his word. I think he feels very strongly about this and feels very strongly that the approach that the Biden administration is taking so early on here is the wrong approach. I mean, pushing through a nearly $2 trillion relief package with no Republican input. It seems like they completely dismissed the group of 10 Republican senators that engaged in good faith earlier this week. I think is the wrong approach, particularly since we don't yet know if the nearly the $1 trillion we spent recently has been fully spent. Right? We don't have a sense of what worked, what didn't work. I am on board with the idea of providing more resources for vaccine production and distribution. I think that is the best thing we can do, not only to save lives, but to get us out of this economic mess. But the fact is we have not spent the full $1 trillion that we passed about a month ago. And I think it would be reckless for us to ram through this purely partisan approach that's going to have a lot of things that are completely unconnected to coronavirus relief in it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Country, but I want to ask you, going back to Biden. There was an episode in the first or second season of The Crown where Churchill is quite sick, and his number two, I guess, Anthony Eden, the foreign secretary, is also quite sick. You have a constitutional issue if you do not have a healthy president in our country. It seems to me that there is a sham being put over on the American.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. The Democrats are preparing to vote to strip Marjorie Taylor Greene from her committee assignments because of her tweets about QAnon. I played you part of her defense today when she said she did those things before she realized they were false. After she realized they were false, she stopped tweeting things by QAnon, but that has not stopped the Democrats from saying she is just beyond the pale and should not be serving on her committee assignments. Now, yesterday we talked about Maxine Waters, who falsely accused the CIA of playing a major role in the drug trade in the inner city. She still has all her committee assignments. She also used her political influence to stop a DEA probe with local Houston task force. And it turns out the suspected drug dealer was a friend of Maxine Waters' husband, and so she used her influence to call off the dogs. A local DEA went public and said that because of Maxine Waters, we had a very good hit, and was called off for political pressure. Same woman who claims the CIA played a major role in the drug trade used her influence, according to this Houston DEA drug agent, to call off a drug investigation, cocaine dealer, suspect, who was a friend of her husband. Kept her committee assignments. Maxine Waters wrote a letter to Fidel Castro, urging him not to send back to America a woman who had murdered a New Jersey trooper, broke out of prison, fled to Cuba. Maxine Waters wrote Castro a letter, likened her to a freedom fighter, said she was being persecuted because of her political beliefs, and urged him to keep her there. She remains there as we speak. Maxine Waters retains her committee assignments. Also, Maxine Waters had a meeting with the then Secretary of Treasury for a bailout of minority-owned banks without informing the Secretary of Treasury that one of those bailout banks to get millions of dollars would be a bank that she and her husband have a financial interest in. She did not disclose that. And there was a House ethics inquiry about that. And it went on and on and on. She ultimately played the race card. It went supernova, and she remains. And she has continually been named as one of the most corrupt members of Congress by a left-wing good government group that talks about, among other things, how she has hired a bunch of employees and paid them substantial amounts of money. Not uncommon in Congress, but she's apparently taken it to a very interesting level. We talked about Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is one of those who will be voting to expel the president from the bench, from the presidency that he's already left from. So the whole thing, of course, is idiotic. But Chuck Schumer will be one of those who will be voting, presumably to ensure that the president never runs again. This is a man, Chuck Schumer, who in 1974, according to a guy named Jay Homnick, who was there, proposed a scheme that racist neighbors in an area of Flatbush wanted to get rid of a couple of buildings full of black people in this otherwise neighborhood that didn't have black people. A young Chuck Schumer running for office said, hey, if you guys vote for me, here's what I'll do. I will propose a plan to reform these two buildings, to refurbish these two buildings. The tenants will have to have a right of first refusal, but we'll make them so nice they won't be able to afford to come back. Well, Chuck Schumer did implement the plan. Turned out that the people who left were able to afford it to come back, so it didn't work, but not for want of trying. I've been talking about this for years. I've been trying to get somebody else to talk about it so that maybe someday somebody will stick a mic in front of Chuck Schumer's face and ask him about it, because he's always playing the race card. And the young man who was there with his racist dad and said he was embarrassed by it, but finally wrote about it because Chuck Schumer was constantly playing the race card, sex card. He said what tipped him over was in 2006 when Judge Alito was proposed for the bench Alito belonged to an all-male club, and Chuck Schumer said that disqualified him from being on the Supreme Court. At this point, the young man who was at that meeting, named Jay Homnick, who writes for the American Spectator, said that tore it, and he began writing about it, and he wrote a piece in 2006 called Race to the Top. It's still online, about what happened at that very meeting. Nobody has ever asked Chuck Schumer about this, to my knowledge. I think I told you, I mentioned this yesterday to Mike Gallagher and to Dr. Gorka, neither of whom were aware of it, neither of whom was aware of it, and so hopefully they'll start talking about it. Enough people start talking about it, then maybe, just maybe, somebody will say something to Chuck Schumer. Because can you imagine what would have happened if somebody said, there were a bunch of neighborhood people in 1974 meeting this young developer named Donald Trump, and we had a couple of buildings in our neighborhood, and they were full of black people. We wanted them out. And this developer said, here's what I'll do. I'll refurbish them, and I'll do. Are you kidding me? How often do people bring up the consent decree that he entered into when he was a young man working for his dad? FHA accused the Trump organization of discriminating against would-be black and brown renters, and without conceding any guilt, they entered into a consent decree and agreed to change practices and this, that, and the other, and that is often used as one of the exhibits to point to Donald Trump's alleged racism. So that statute of limitations has not run out. That took place around the same time that Chuck Schumer proposed his racist scheme. Is this thing on? Are you familiar with Alcee Hastings? Alcee Hastings is a congressman from Florida. He was put on the federal bench by Jimmy Carter on tape discussing a $150,000 bribe to give light sentences to defendants who were mob connected. He was prosecuted. He was found not guilty, played the race card, among other things. However, the 11th Circuit reported that he had used false information, and they ordered him off the bench. Recommended that he be impeached. The House voted to impeach him. Keep in mind, this is after he had been acquitted. House of Representatives, controlled by Democrats, voted 413-3 to impeach him. 17 articles of impeachment. I think that's the most articles of impeachment they ever voted out. The Senate convicted him of 8 counts, and he was thrown off the bench. The man played the race card, said that he was persecuted because of his opposition to Republicans, to Reagan, and got elected, and now serves in Congress for Florida. And believe it or not, he is on the Rules Committee. I kid you not, you cannot make this up. And he's been investigated for paying his girlfriend more than he pays his chief of staff. CNBC, headline, February 22, 2019. Representative Alcee Hastings, who faces House ethics probe, paid his girlfriend more than his chief of staff. According to House disbursement records beginning in 2011, Patricia Williams, as Hastings' deputy district director, earned more than Hastings' former chief of staff, despite being his subordinate. He's facing an ethics probe at the time for his relationship with his subordinate staff member. This is a man who voted twice to impeach Donald Trump. And he is in the House Rules Committee. Nobody has stripped him of his committee assignments. Ilhan Omar retains her committee assignments despite saying that Jews have hypnotized the world and that Jewish lawmakers have dual loyalties. They couldn't even condemn her by name. This is a group that wants to strip Marjorie Taylor Greene of her committee assignments. Are you kidding me? And don't get me started on Al Sharpton, the kingmaker. I want to remind you of something that Mr. Scarborough once said about his colleague on MSNBC Hee Haw. When we come back, I'm Larry Elder.
This is Lon Heechen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. The Biden administration announced in their first week that the U.S. is rejoining the World Health Organization. But the WHO is a flawed group, one that has performed poorly while the world has struggled with COVID-19. Early on, the group was far too deferential to China, even parroting Beijing's early claim that the virus could not be transmitted between humans. Since then, an independent panel concluded that the WHO dithered in its response, waiting too long to declare an international emergency. All the while, the WHO has continued to block Taiwan's participation because of political objections from the Chinese government, despite the fact that the world has much to learn from Taiwan's exceptional response to the virus. Before rejoining the WHO, we should have demanded some accountability and reform from the group for the $400 million in taxpayer dollars we send to it each year. It looks like we'll keep on writing blank checks to the WHO, which they are more than happy to keep cashing. I'm Lon Heechen.
The Pepperdine School of Public Policy, America's unique graduate program for leaders. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
What we are heading towards will be one of the most violent decades in American history. Why? Massive wealth and income inequality is one reason, because of the lockdowns and because of leaders that do not care about the well-being of their subjects. A war on police officers and a war on law enforcement, and quite honestly, a war on the law in general. And also an unmanaged transition from the corporate boardroom industrial economy to the digital economy. When you have this much economic dislocation, when you have this much disruption, do not be surprised when murder rates and homicide rates skyrocket. New York City is becoming a place that is completely unrecognizable. Just some of my buddies in Chicago that I grew up with said they do not feel comfortable going to downtown Chicago. They feel their car will almost assuredly be carjacked, or whatever is in their car will be stolen. When I was in San Francisco, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, parked on the side of the street, nice part of San Francisco, everything we had in there completely and totally stolen. Windows smashed, all of our stuff stolen. Do not be surprised when civil society starts to unravel, when you attack every single core institution that keeps civil society together.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Biden has signed an executive order mandating you must wear a mask while on federal property, indoors, with other people. Is Jen Psaki a super spreader? Now, this will never come up. Oh, no one at the New York Times, nobody's going to write a scathing article in the Atlantic about Jen Psaki's apparent refusal to wear a mask. And I've been going through this in my head. I'm thinking, well, maybe she had COVID. All right, well, that doesn't matter. They've told us it doesn't matter if you've had COVID. You still have to wear your mask and social distance. Yeah, but she's got the antibodies. That doesn't matter. You can get it again. We don't know how long you can have the antibodies. You got to wear a mask and socially distance. You sure have to follow the federal mandate, don't you? My goodness, what's the answer to this question? Somebody's got to know. Michael, we'll start with.
Hey, Larry Elder, the Sage, Brent Dyke from Peoria, Illinois. Listen, a podcast listener here telling you that I used to work in radio, and I've got to tell you, of all the conservative shows I listen to, whether it's Rush, Levin, I got to tell you, man, you've got the best sound and bumper music. Keep it up. Love the tunes. You take care. Thanks for doing what you're doing, man. Love you, Larry. Take care. Bye-bye.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. By the way, this is a song written by a guy named Jim Weatherly, one of Gladys Knight and the Pips' greatest hits. Remember one time Johnny Carson said, "Windy out there." "How windy was it, Johnny?" "It was so windy Gladys Knight had to tie down her pips." I'm here all week. Throw something in the tip jar. 2 drink minimum. 888-971-SAGE. Now, we're talking about the various people who are weighing in on Marjorie Taylor Greene, and one of those weighing in is Joe Scarborough. Joe Scarborough, if the Republicans can't get rid of her, what kind of standards do they have? You know, Joe Scarborough is the same station with Al Sharpton, and they are now Goombas.
Let's bring in Reverend Al Sharpton to talk about a couple of cases going on right now. Reverend, it's always great to see you. Thanks for being here with us.
Good to see you.
House Congressional Resolution 270, March 8, 2000. Mr. Scarborough submitted the following concurrent resolution, which was referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Concurrent resolution condemning the racist and anti-Semitic views of the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Let's bring in Reverend Al Sharpton to talk about a couple of cases going on right now. Reverend, it's always great to see you.
Whereas the Congress strongly rejects the racist and incendiary actions of Reverend Al Sharpton. Whereas the Reverend Al Sharpton has referred to members of the Jewish faith as blood-sucking Jews and Jew bastards. Whereas the Reverend Al Sharpton has referred to members of the Jewish faith as white interlopers and diamond merchants. Whereas the Reverend Al Sharpton was found guilty of defamation by a jury in a New York court arising from the false accusation that former Assistant District Attorney Stephen Pagonis, who is white, raped and assaulted a 15-year-old black girl. Whereas, to this day, the Reverend Al Sharpton has refused to accept responsibility and expresses no regret for defaming Mr. Pagonis. Whereas, the Reverend Al Sharpton's vicious verbal anti-Semitic attacks directed at members of the Jewish faith, and in particular a Jewish landlord arising from a simple landlord-tenant dispute with a black tenant, incited widespread violence, riots, and the murder of 5 innocent people. Whereas, the Reverend Al Sharpton's fierce demagoguery incited violence, riots, and murder in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn in New York, following the accidental death of a black pedestrian child hit by a motorcade of Rabbi Mordecai Schneerson. Whereas the Reverend Al Sharpton led a protest in the Crown Heights neighborhood and marched next to a protester with a sign that read, "The white man is the devil." Whereas the Reverend Al Sharpton has insulted members of the Jewish faith by challenging Jews to violence and stating the Jews to pin down their yarmulkes. And whereas the Reverend Al Sharpton has practiced the politics of racial division and made inflammatory remarks against whites by characterizing the death of Amadou Diallo as a racially motivated police assassination. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Congress that the Congress condemns the practices of Reverend Al Sharpton, which seek to divide Americans on the basis of race, ethnicity, and religion, expresses its outrage over the violence that has resulted due to the Reverend Al Sharpton's incendiary words and actions, and fervently urges elected officials and public servants who have condoned and legitimized Reverend Al Sharpton's incendiary words and actions to publicly denounce and condemn such racist and anti-Semitic views.
Let's bring in Reverend Al Sharpton to talk about a couple of cases going on right now. Reverend, it's always great to see you. Thanks for being here with us.
Good to see you.
I got nothing else to say. I rest my case. Maxine Waters, the one who urged people to surround Trump cabinet members, let them know they're not welcome anywhere anymore, says Donald Trump should be charged with premeditated murder.
Minority women in Congress are often threatened
and we're at risk. And just as AOC was threatened that day, I was lucky. I was locked in my office. I would not leave it, even when they tried to get me to go to where they were gathering all of the members in one room. I'm glad I didn't because of the contagion that took place there and the members who ended up with, the COVID-19.
A letter to Castro. Dear Fidel, hope I haven't caught you at a bad time. Just want to let you know that there's a woman that you have in your country, and these bastards over here are trying to get her to come back to the States just because she murdered a trooper. I mean, can you imagine? Anyway, keep her. It's all good.
But yeah, I recognized what she was saying and how she felt, and I know how I have to live my life.
Now, it turns out, of course, AOC was completely exaggerating the whole thing, but that's not going to stop Maxine.
But what's so interesting about all of this is they tried to make themselves the victim.
And remember the 1992 riots here in L.A.? It was a rebellion. It wasn't a riot. It was just people who were just expressing their outrage over injustice.
When indeed they are following the president.
They weren't looting. There was just a woman who saw an opportunity to give her kids some milk, and she took it.
Of the United States of America, who had advanced planning about the invasion.
Wait. Advanced planning? But I thought Donald Trump gave a speech and caused everybody to just go crazy. But now you're saying there was advanced planning?
It took place in our capital, and even there's information that some.
Well, then why was he impeached for giving a speech that caused an incitement to insurrection, and now you're saying it was pre-planned?
The planning came out of individuals working in his campaign. As a matter of fact, he absolutely should be charged with premeditated murder.
Now, she's all about social justice, all about criminal justice. She just made a scurrilous accusation without any proof, saying that members of the Trump team planned, coordinated, premeditated what happened on January 6th. Is there any evidence of that, let alone widespread evidence, which they now use when they refute the idea that there was fraud, shenanigans, irregularities in the vote? Where's your widespread evidence? Maxine Waters need to know evidence, let alone widespread evidence. That's not a problem.
Because of the lives that were lost with this invasion, with this insurrection. And so, yes, we are threatened, but we can't back up. We've got to fight as hard as we can.
She didn't say fight, did she? I didn't hear the word fight, did I? I think she said fight. Fight as hard as we can. You didn't say that, did you?
We are threatened, but we can't back up. We've got to fight as hard as we can.
She sure did.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
2020 was the largest percentage increase in homicides in American history. Murder was up nearly 37% in a sample of 57 large and medium-sized cities. Based on preliminary estimates, at least 2,000 more Americans, most of them black, were killed in 2020 than in 2019. You would think that would be a heavy focus or primary focus for the ruling class media. The local murder increases in 2020 were as following: 95% in Milwaukee, 78% in Louisville, 74% in Seattle, 72% in Minneapolis, 62% in New Orleans, and 58% in Atlanta. A lot of people blame it just purely on the pandemic stress. Do you not remember the defund the police narrative that swept our country for months, and Minneapolis basically did defund their police. One of the reasons why some of the police officers in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol tragedy did not have lethal weapons is because some of them were disarmed by Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
We've seen the sausage machine from the inside. Okay. Your verdict on the first 15 days?
Full fail. Absolute, total, utter fail. Economically fail. In terms of PR, fail. Just a totally pathetic 2 weeks. The fact that Biden's big vaccine plan literally didn't exist. There's no COVID plan. He already said that that there's nothing they can do. So disaster there. Disaster on the Keystone Pipeline. His climate czar is John Kerry, who is literally like a cartoon character of a bad politician. He's a climate czar and has a private jet at the same time. But
it's okay. He said when he flew to Iceland to get the award, he said today, but somebody like me has to have a private jet. I'm going to use that excuse. If I get a private jet, I'm going to say, but someone like me has to have a private jet, Boris. Don't you agree?
He's so fancy, and he's achieved so much in his life. He's been such a high achieving person. You know, after serving in Vietnam, and thanks for his service, buying someone else's medals to throw out, okay?
And then testifying against our nation and the Vietnam War in the Senate.
Being a totally useless senator, a horrible candidate for president, Iran's best friend as Secretary of State, can't even ride a bicycle normally.
Well, but hang on, Boris. He did marry up.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Manchin comes on last night and he says very reassuring things. He's not going to screw with the bird rule. $15 minimum wage is not in there. We're going to use reconciliation, but if it doesn't have bipartisan support, he's not voting for it. What do you make of that?
Hey, Sage, I heard you say that President Trump is the most successful in your lifetime as president, most popular, more popular than Ronald Reagan. Come on, man. Put down the Kool-Aid. Ronald Reagan won, crushing his opponents in 2 elections, won the popular vote and the electoral vote, and when he left office, he had a higher popularity rating than FDR. Mr. Trump is the most popular president since Reagan, but he'd have to stand on his old grandma's shoulder to reach high enough to kiss Ronald Reagan's hindquarters. Out.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. I was talking about his popularity with Republicans. And you're right, Ronald Reagan was very, very popular with Republicans, but you have to look at the time that you measure it. The most popular president in my lifetime, for a time, far and away, was President George Herbert Walker Bush after the successful Persian Gulf War. His popularity among Republicans was at 99%. It declined and declined and declined and declined throughout the rest of his presidency. But it's hard to beat 99%. But you're right, Reagan certainly nationwide was more popular. I mentioned the 49-1 state victory that he won in re-election in 1984. It's hard to beat that. But Donald Trump popularity is very, very high. He has reason to brag about it, but you're right. It's probably not accurate to say he's the highest rated of any Republican president in my lifetime, especially when you consider the 99% that George Herbert Walker Bush had at the time because of the very successful prosecution of the Persian Gulf War. But Donald Trump is not lying when he says he's very, very popular among Republicans. He is. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Michael is in South Carolina. Michael, you're on the Larry Elder Show.
Hey, how you doing, Larry?
I'm doing well.
That's good. You're a true patriot, and it's an honor to talk to you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm originally from Rhode Island. I am originally from Rhode Island. I moved here for conservative value and views. It's a great state. I'm just a little out of breath because I drive a tractor trailer, and I was dropping the landing legs when I heard you.
Okay.
I'm just catching my breath. But what I wanted to talk about is I did a lot of research at home on several websites, and if you look this up, you can look it on facts.com, everything. There's 133 million registered voters in the United States right now. And if you take what happened, we have 74 million that voted for Donald J. Trump.
Mm-hmm.
You have supposedly 84 million who voted for Joe Biden. Now, if you do the math, that's 158 million, and there's 133 legal registered voters. Why isn't this being sorted out? Is my question.
Michael,
thank you very much.
Michael, before you hang up, your source for the 133 million registered voters is what?
That's on Facts Checks. It's on every single. You can look it all up. I
will.
I did research for 2 full days, and you can look at it's out there to be found. And Donald J. Trump is the best president we've had in a long, long time. I love Reagan, but I'm so scared to see the direction in which this is going. And also, all these National Guards people around the state capitol, doesn't that tell Biden anything?
Mm-hmm,
I mean, once they come for our guns, the Constitution was designed for us to take our country back.
Well, Michael, thank you very much. I will check it out. Mr. McConnell, will you look it up and see exactly how many registered voters there are in America? And then we'll do the math. Joe is in the Bronx. Joe, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling.
Yes, good evening, Larry.
Evening.
You mentioned Heather McDonald last night as an accurate source of facts and information.
Mm-hmm.
I would also recommend Paul Craig Roberts, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts,
right.
The former Assistant Treasury Secretary under Ronald Reagan, Father Reaganomics, who's spot on a wide variety of issues as well. So again, I would also, in addition to Heather McDonald in that pantheon, I would definitely put Paul Craig Roberts. Now, on to my comments. If Marjorie Greene is an issue for supporting QAnon, what does the media make of President Joe Biden, who said, and I quote, "English jurisprudential culture is a white man's culture that has got to change," unquote. So in other words, all the hallmarks and foundational legal precepts that this country is built on, and we inherited from Britain, due process, equality before the law, probable cause, etc., is, quote, racist, unquote, and needs to be dispensed with.
Absolutely. Joe, thank you very much for that. And let's not forget Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff is the one who said he'd seen tons of information about the collusion between Trump and Putin. The tons of information, of evidence that didn't even exist. Has he been stripped of his committee assignments? Just hang on. Probably still has a Twitter account. Maybe an Instagram too. TikTok. Robin Hood. I'm Larry Elder.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Biden has signed an executive order mandating you must wear a mask while on federal property, indoors, with other people. Is Jen Psaki a super spreader? Now, this will never come up. Oh, no one at the New York Times, nobody's going to write a scathing article in the Atlantic about Jen Psaki's apparent refusal to wear a mask. And I've been going through this in my head. I'm thinking, well, maybe she had COVID. All right, well, that doesn't matter. They've told us it doesn't matter if you've had COVID. You still have to wear your mask and social distance. Yeah, but she's got the antibodies. That doesn't matter. You can get it again. We don't know how long you can have the antibodies. You got to wear a mask and socially distance. You sure have to follow the federal mandate, don't you? My goodness, what's the answer to this question? Somebody's got to know. Michael, we'll start with you. How you doing, Michael?
Hi there. Hey, I just wanted to tell you that press secretary, she's circling around.
But she hadn't even circled back on this issue. Nobody's asked her in the first place. Which is no shock, I guess. I really want to know. I want to know. I gotta know. I really do. Look, I mean, honest to goodness, this can't be that tricky.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Why can't there be an ad on Facebook for the recall of the governor of California? Which reminds me to remind you that you can go. We sent in ours yesterday, by the way. Just for the record. It said you had to sign in black or blue ink. So do you think my more purple-like ink will be okay for my fountain pen? Or will they disqualify it? We actually thought about that, my wife and I, when I signed it. Because they'll do anything to disqualify a ballot. The people who yell voter suppression don't seem to be all that concerned with regard to voter suppression and the recall. This man has ruined so many people's lives in the state of California that he holds a somewhat unique spot in American history as utterly destructive. So with the LA Times. These are forces of bad. They're forces of destruction. The LA Times defended Gascon, the district attorney of Los Angeles County. Not only endorsed, they're defending his policies. It's one thing they could endorse him because they'll always endorse a leftist, but now that they see what he's doing, do you know that other counties are not even referring cases to Los Angeles County? Because he has a soft spot, this George Soros-funded, truly evil man has a soft spot for murderers because they don't care. You understand? The left doesn't care if you've murdered or if you've raped, if you've sold enough drugs to kill a village. They care about your color.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
2020 was the largest
Hi, Larry. John from Erie. Hope you're doing well. Recently, there was a Texas Republican MAGA congressman who posted something and said, if you didn't complain about Antifa in Portland, I don't want to hear you about the MAGA riots in the Capitol. Mitt Romney just said something very sound. He went ahead and said, if you are saying that the country is divided, going to be divided because we go through the proper impeachment process with Donald Trump, I want to know first, before I hear from you, that you have gone out and been truthful and said that the president and others have told the big lie and said that the election was rigged. And you need to know the truth now that Joe Biden has won. I agree with him 100%. I wondered what you think.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. I think that there are all sorts of irregularities. I think Pennsylvania extended their deadlines for voting. I believe that the Supreme Court should have taken up that case. I believe there are all sorts of irregularities all over the place. And I believe that if your guy, or if Joe Biden lost by 40,000 votes in 3 states, as was the margin of victory, you'd be hopping mad and would be demanding hearings as well. I don't know what happened. I do know there are enough things that I'd be concerned about it. I think 75 million voters who voted for Donald Trump, and I'm one of them, have every reason to ask what the hell happened here. 2005, Democrats challenged the electors for George W. Bush. Stephanie Tubbs Jones in the state of Ohio said that there was voter fraud, even said there was voting machine manipulation. was joined with Barbara Boxer. You have to have one senator joined with at least one House person, and Barbara Boxer did. And we played you a montage of people like Barack Obama and others praising the attempt, just to make sure that the election was fair and square, they said. That's what I believe. I did not think that the effort was going to prevail. We called up, and he was upset with me. He said, "Larry, you can say you don't believe it's going to succeed, but don't say it's not going to work." And I said, by definition, it's my own opinion, but it's not going to work, and I knew it wasn't going to work. You know, I watch a lot of CNN and MSNBC, so you guys don't have to. And the day before, nobody was talking about the bunch of Trump supporters coming there and they're going to trash the place. Nobody was worried about it. None of the anchors were. They were just talking about a bunch of Trump supporters going to come there and protest the election, yada, blah, et cetera. But nobody, none of the anchors anyway, oh my goodness, hide the women and children because these people are just crazy. They're going to trash the Capitol building. Nobody said that. The word stolen, the term of art. Hillary Clinton for 4 years said that the election was stolen. She even used that word. She used the word illegitimate over and over and over again for all the people saying, I want you to look me in the eye and tell me whether or not that election was won by Joe Biden. Have you said that to Hillary? Hillary, look me in the eye and tell me that election was won by Donald Trump. Did anybody say that to her? No. Whole different standard. That's what's so disgusting about this. Maxine Waters can threaten cabinet members. I wasn't inciting an insurrection. I was just telling people to tell people that they have no right to live anywhere. Chuck Schumer, outside the Supreme Court, with other people. Some would call it a mob. I want to tell you, Gorsuch. I want to tell you, Kavanaugh. What is that? You will reap the whirlwind. That sounds painful. And then you had that Republican official talking about voter fraud, regular, routine, in Detroit, in Pontiac, in Flint. And please don't tell me there's no voter fraud in Philadelphia. That is one of the most corrupt cities in the country. At one time, virtually every single member of city council was under investigation for bribes. Race car was played. Investigation went supernova. That race car is amazing, isn't it? Do not leave home without it. Nancy Pelosi. Race card. Incitement to riot. Didn't say a damn thing when week after week after week we were watching these riots in the streets. And all these excuses were made. Did anybody suggest that Cedric Richmond, who's now a top policy guy with Joe Biden, should be stripped of his committee positions for accusing Bill Barr of engaging in systematic racism? And his standard for systematic racism is failure to bring somebody black with you?
Attorney General Barr, you started your testimony with eloquent words about the life and legacy of John Lewis fighting systematic racism, voter intimidation, civil rights. The one thing that you have in common with your two predecessors, both Attorney General Sessions and Attorney General Whitaker, is that when you all came here and brought your top staff, you brought no black people. That, sir, is systematic racism.
Nobody said a word. Failure to bring a black top staffer is systematic racism. Had the man brought a black top staffer, what would he been called? A token? A sellout? An Uncle Tom? Did anybody at all say a word? The definition of systematic racism is failure to bring somebody black? Susan Rice does this whole display about getting rid of systematic racism. Is that the definition? Not including black people? In an administration that's conservative? That typically doesn't attract a whole lot of black staffers? Wouldn't that suggest that in order to get somebody to bring to this meeting, you'd have to lower standards to find somebody? Is that what you want? Is that what you're recommending? Now, I've been telling you about Relief Factor for 5, 6, 7 years. Some say there might be 100 million folks struggling with some kind of pain, whether from exercise or just getting older. That sound like you? Are you having difficulty with your back, your shoulder, your neck, hip, foot, knee from exercise or just getting older? If that sounds like you, why don't you consider ordering the 3-week quick start? You see, the docs who formulated Relief Factor selected the 4 best ingredients, each of which are 100% drug-free, to attack pain from a different metabolic pathway. Give your body what it needs to heal itself. Over 70% of the people who order the 3-week quick start go on to order more. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. 800-500-8384, 800-500-8384. Jim Weatherly, writer of this song, dead at the age of 77, and his home in Nashville. Didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't curse.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
2020 was the largest percentage increase in homicides in American history. Murder was up nearly 37% in a sample of 57 large and medium sized cities. Based on preliminary estimates, at least 2,000 more Americans, most of them black, were killed in 2020 than in 2019. You would think that would be a heavy focus or primary focus for the ruling class media. The local murder increases in 2020 were as following: 95% in Milwaukee, 78% in Louisville, 74% in Seattle, 72% in Minneapolis, 62% in New Orleans, and 58% in Atlanta. A lot of people blame it just purely on the pandemic stress. Do you not remember the defund the police narrative that swept our country for months? And Minneapolis basically did defund their police. One of the reasons why some of the police officers in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol tragedy did not have lethal weapons is because some of them were disarmed by Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Larry, it's Phil from Midland. It's been a while since I spoke to you. I'm quite disturbed that we are now being forced, because public schools receive money from the federal government, that we have to teach our children about BLM. And it's okay to wear a BLM shirt, but you can't wear a shirt that says America First, or even a picture of the American flag. This is where our problem is, and we have to address it. And it's amazing how many times people stopped saying the word fraud because they were afraid of being canceled, when we know that there was fraud all over this election that just happened. Why the chicken blank courts would not take up the issue of these very certain fraudulent activities of the Democratic Party. They changed the rules of the state without going through the state legislatures. It's an abomination. It's a shameful part of our history.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Well, we're going to find out. Remember, the CEO of MyPillow, Mike Lindell, received a cease and desist letter from Dominion telling him to stop saying that the election was fraudulent. He has not stopped it. He said, bring it on. Sidney Powell has been sued for defamation. She also says, bring it on. So there's going to be discovery, and truth is a complete defense. We're going to find out. Now, let's fact check. Here's what fact check says. Headline, 133 million voters argument uses flawed logic. Posts circulating on social media allege that only 133 million registered voters voted to falsely claim that the number of votes cast for Joe Biden is not mathematically possible. The calculation on which this claim is based is misleading. The nationwide voter turnout is usually calculated using the eligible voting population as a denominator, not the number of registered voters. Around 239,247,182 people were eligible to vote in 2020. While there is no available figure yet for nationwide registered voters for 2020, Reuters calculations found that there were an estimated 206,557,583 registered voters as of the publication of this article. So they rate the meme and the post on social media as false. Again, Mike Lindell claims that there is evidence that the voting machines themselves were manipulated. He says cyber experts who have done the analysis, and all of this is going to come out during the discovery portion, assuming the lawsuits go further, and it doesn't appear that either side is going to back down. Now, come back. Alan Dershowitz says that the Democrats' brief for convicting President Trump is more dangerous than anything that happened on the Capitol building on January 6th. I'm Larry Elder.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
But I want to ask you, going back to Biden, there was an episode in the first or second season of The Crown where Churchill is quite sick, and his number two, I guess Anthony Eden, the foreign secretary, is also quite sick. You have a constitutional issue. If you do not have a healthy president in our country, it seems to me that there is a sham being put over on the American people, that this is something that we haven't talked about because we don't talk about these things. The mainstream media doesn't ever want to accuse Joe Biden of being anything less than, a great athlete or something. Right. But the fact is that what we have seen makes me think it's a fact that he is not actually governing, that he has an earpiece. People are telling him what to do. People are putting things in front of him to sign.
Here's what I suspect is going to happen at some point. I really think that Kamala Harris, she is the chosen one of the power brokers of the DNC and particularly the media establishment. So she did terribly, by the way, with Democratic voters, if you remember. She didn't even make it in the Democratic primary to the first vote. She didn't get to the Iowa caucuses. She didn't get to the New Hampshire primary. She was that unpopular, had no fundraising, no support. However, she was able to maneuver herself into being the vice president of the United States with, to your point, an extremely apparently vulnerable, and literally medically incapable president of the United States, which means that she could easily become the president at some point. So my guess is if this move is going to happen at some point, it will come from a highly ambitious Vice President Harris.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Albert Mohler for townhall.com. The American experiment is founded upon a presupposition, a prior commitment to an ordered liberty, an established order. That means policies. It means a covenant. In our case, it means a constitution. As of right now, the U.S. Constitution is the longest surviving written constitution in human history. It's a remarkable document. All of that came to the fore in violent events that interrupted the joint session of Congress to count the votes of the Electoral College. At the end of the day, our constitutional order proved itself once again resilient. But that doesn't take away any of the tragedy and the horror of what took place. It was an enormous stress test on ordered liberty, a stress test brought on by the President of the United States.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved.
It's an opportunity for the right, the left, conservatives, liberals, all Americans to repudiate political violence and reaffirm, once again, our commitment to ordered liberty. It's the American way. I'm Albert Mohler.
The Pepperdine School of Public Policy, America's unique graduate program for leaders. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
You know what I can't get out of my head? Why doesn't this woman wear a mask? They're all so mask-friendly in the White House now. Biden is often behind the Resolute desk with his mask on in the Oval Office. You know, you hardly see Biden without a mask ever. Somebody tweeted out last night, or yesterday, Jen Psaki should be wearing a mask when she does her press conferences, perhaps double masks, if she wants to set a good example. If every American needs to wear a mask while working indoors, she does too. Also, isn't she on federal property? Americans demand consistency. Now, do the rules not apply to the White House press secretary? How does that work? She's standing at a podium with numerous particles coming out of her mouth as she's answering questions that she apparently has been given in advance from the White House press corps. I had my producer, who's pretty nifty at tracking things down. I said, Derek, what has she said about it? He said, well, I don't think she's ever been asked. Well, of course she hasn't ever been asked. You think this news media would be asking her that? You think this White House press corps would ask her that? They'd ask Kayleigh McEnany. They'd be shrieking demands at her. They'd be calling her a super spreader. They'd be bellowing that she's killing people. Jen Psaki? Nah, you don't want to wear a mask? That's okay with us. Okay by us.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I'll circle back if there's more I can share with you. But I'll circle back with you if there's more to convey. I'll have to just circle back with you. We can circle back with I'm happy to circle back with you. I can circle back. I will have to circle back on that one. That's an excellent question. Oh, such an important question. We will circle back with you, and we'll circle back with you. It's an interesting question, but we'll circle back. I'm happy to circle back, but I'll have to circle back with you on it. It's a good question, but we'll circle back with you on this today. We will certainly circle back with you more direct.
I think somebody did a count. 73 mentions of circling back by the new White House press secretary. Let's ask somebody who is a communications professional his verdict. He is the co-host of our special podcast, The Battle for 1600. We just recorded episode 49. Check it out now. Subscribe. We go into more detail, a little bit more spicy, lots of fun. He is, of course, the Baron. Boris Epstein. That's pretty pathetic. 73 she must be dizzy by now.
I'm going to have to circle back to you on that.
Don't you dare. This is my show. No circling back.
Maybe she's circling. Who knows? It is very disappointing. I think it is beneath the office that Jen Psaki holds to be acting as she has. And I think it's portraying weakness abroad. And that's the last thing we want to have is weakness as the United States of America portrayed to our adversaries and, frankly, to our allies.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Do you expect there will be tax hikes, which would be ruinous with the economy as it is?
I do. I guess I'm getting a bit pessimistic about all this, because I do think there's a sense within the Democratic Party right now that this is really their only opportunity to go big or go home over the next 2 years. I mean, technically they'll get 2 or 3 bites at the reconciliation apple if you look at how this might play out. But I think they feel like they have, 1 or 2 big swings here, and they have to swing for the fences in order to have any hope of winning in the midterm and in 2022. And again, I just think it would be a mistake to interpret the results of the November election as giving them a sweeping mandate for progressive reform. If anything, I think the verdict that the country delivered is that it wants a more moderate.
In Washington, D.C., in the Biden administration. Headline, California Globe, California's 2020 unemployment fraud claims may top $31 billion. Subheadline, Labor and Workforce Development Agency Secretary Julie Su announces increased EDD benefit backlog. Quote, California Labor and Workforce Development Agency Secretary Julie Su announced Monday that in 2020, fraudsters stole at least $11.4 billion in unemployment benefits from California. Su also noted that another $20 billion may have also been stolen by identity thieves and foreign criminals, possibly making as much as 27% of all of EDD unemployment benefits being sent to fraudsters last year. Quote, there is no sugarcoating the reality, explained Secretary Su. California did not have sufficient security measures in place to prevent this level of fraud, and criminals took advantage of that situation, end of quote.
On 7 on your side and that team tracking the numerous fraudulent claims that have plagued the EDD since the start of the pandemic. This afternoon, it confirmed billions of dollars have been paid out to scammers.
There is no sugarcoating the reality. California did not have sufficient security measures in place to prevent this level of fraud. Of the $114 billion in unemployment benefits paid by California since March, approximately 10% has been confirmed as fraudulent.
Staggering.
An additional 17% of the paid claims have been identified as potentially fraudulent.
Now, the EDD says it is working to verify the identities of people who made claims, and many remain under investigation. The woman you heard there, Julie Su, is expected to be nominated for the U.S. Labor Department by President Biden.
Quote, Su, who is expected to be elevated to Deputy Secretary of Labor in Washington by President Joe Biden soon, also played down the large rise, noting that fraud was happening nationwide, and in some states, such as Washington, they have seen $600 million worth of fraudulent claims. Financial experts told the Globe what happened in California is incomparable to anywhere else. This is inexcusable, explained an LA-based accountant. 10% or over $11 billion is way too much. If it's the worst case, at over $30 billion, that's incomprehensible. How could that have happened? End of quote. The Globe article then points to who Sue blames for the problem. And you know who I'm going to say. Quote, while Sue did place some blame on the Trump administration for not giving fraud support or putting in assistant safeguards, many lawmakers from both parties squarely put the blame on the state's handling of it. Talk about failing up. And now he's going to be a member of the Biden administration. Check out this headline. NBC. California unemployment chief vows changes after audit. No kidding. New employment development director says this will never happen again. And now, because of their having to reevaluate all these claims, some of the people who have legitimate claims are not getting theirs either. This is the crowd that we want to put in charge of our health care. Because after all, single payer would be more efficient, cheaper, more convenient, right? Biden, as the now lead lawyer for the Trump team said, had a golden opportunity to reach out, pick up the phone, call Schumer, and say, cut this nonsense out. It is not lawful to prosecute somebody after he's left office, to expel him from the office he just left. Instead, Biden said, the trial has to go forward.
They asked me whether or not they thought the trial should go forward. They didn't ask me whether or not he should have been impeached. He was impeached by the House. And it has to move forward. Otherwise, it would come off as farcical, what this was all about. I think it's important that there be certain basic standards that people at least are able to see what happened and make their own judgments. I'm not looking for any retribution. I'm not looking. It's just my job is to try to heal the country and move us forward.
This brief, filed by the Democrats in the House of Representatives and submitted to the Senate, this brief is more dangerous to freedom of speech, more dangerous to our democratic governance than anything they accuse Donald Trump of doing. Donald Trump's a former president. These are members of Congress. They're asking the Senate to abridge the First Amendment. They're telling the Senate to ignore the First Amendment. Again, the First Amendment does not apply at all to an impeachment proceeding. Ignore it. Don't pay any attention to the First Amendment. Why is the First Amendment in the Constitution? It's a constraint on Congress, a constraint on the Senate, a constraint on the House, a constraint on Jamie Raskin. And yet he doesn't seem to understand that Congress can't do anything in violation of the First Amendment.
This is absolutely absurd. Josh Hawley?
John, you are correct. You remember correctly. I do believe that this is unconstitutional. I think that the Constitution sets out exhaustively what power the Senate has to try and convict officials. It says that you can try and convict the President of the United States, not an ex-president, not a private citizen. I think that there's no jurisdiction here, to use a legal term. The Senate just doesn't have the authority to try and convict a private citizen. The right remedy, the Constitution makes clear, is criminal proceedings in the criminal justice system. If you think you've got a private citizen who's committed a crime, that person, even if they are an ex-president, can be tried and so forth. But the Senate does not have the power to do that against any private citizen, even if they are an ex-president. So I think the whole thing is unconstitutional. I think it is illegitimate under the Constitution, and I won't support it for those reasons.
That's Josh Hawley. Too bad he didn't show the same kind of cashews when he wrote that letter to his black constituents and essentially apologized for supporting the election challenge. I didn't realize that you were going to perceive this as disenfranchising black people. Sigh.
Is now coming to the Senate, and I believe that it's
unconstitutional for us in the Senate to go through a trial of impeachment of somebody who is no longer in office, and the fact that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court isn't going to preside tells me that it is not a legitimate process.
That's John Barrasso, Republican from Wyoming. Breonna Keeler, CNN, says Ted Cruz incited the riot by telling activists they were fighting for America. We're not going to play you that montage again of Democrats using the term fight, 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 fight. Standard campaign rhetoric. And this man has been impeached for that and is now being tried. Second time. We all know where it's going to end up. There aren't enough Republicans willing to join the Democrats to convict him, let alone to make sure he never runs again. So it's all a big joke. And it's only going to make Donald Trump stronger. He's already raising a lot of money off this. I think he's raised, about $100 million in the last few days off this? All you're doing is making him stronger. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. Do not leave town.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Why can't there be an ad on Facebook for the recall of the governor of California? Which reminds me to remind you that you can go. We sent in ours yesterday, by the way. Just for the record. It said you had to sign in black or blue ink. So do you think my more purple-like ink will be okay for my fountain pen? Or will they disqualify it? We actually thought about that, my wife and I, when I signed it. Because they'll do anything to disqualify a ballot. The people who yell voter suppression don't seem to be all that concerned with regard to voter suppression and the recall. This man has ruined so many people's lives in the state of California that he holds a somewhat unique spot in American history as utterly destructive. So with the LA Times. These are forces of bad. They're forces of destruction. The LA Times defended Gascon, the district attorney of Los Angeles County. Not only endorsed, they're defending his policies. It's one thing they could endorse him because they'll always endorse a leftist, but now that they see what he's doing, do you know that other counties are not even referring cases to Los Angeles County? Because he has a soft spot, this George Soros-funded, truly evil man, has a soft spot for murderers because they don't care. You understand? The left doesn't care if you've murdered or if you've raped, if you've sold enough drugs to kill a village. They care about your color.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
2020 was the largest percentage increase in homicides in American history. Murder was up nearly 37% in a sample of 57 large and medium-sized cities. Based on preliminary estimates, at least 2,000 more Americans, most of them black, were killed in 2020 than in 2019. You would think that would be a heavy focus or primary focus for the ruling class media. The local murder increases in 2020 were as following: 95% in Milwaukee, 78% in Louisville, 74% in Seattle, 72% in Minneapolis, 62% in New Orleans, and 58% in Atlanta. A lot of people blame it just purely on the pandemic stress. Do you not remember the defund the police narrative that swept our country for months? And Minneapolis basically did defund their police. One of the reasons why some of the police officers in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol tragedy did not have lethal weapons is because some of them were disarmed by Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Hey, Larry. Love you like a brother, man. Love your show. And this might be a little bit of an odd call. I don't know if you'd be able to play it, but just something that kind of irks my crawl a little bit. You know, I collect pianos, and there are old pianos that have real ivory that came from elephants, and I'm sure you would agree. I don't want an elephant killed so I can have ivory piano keys now. And there was an imitation ivory decades and decades ago, much longer ago, that started being used than what people actually think. But you know how Brad Pitt and everybody came on television, and it's illegal to sell ivory now. And Brad Pitt crushed up his little ivory figurines and all that kind of stuff as virtue signaling on the internet in little videos. Well, did they do that with all their diamonds? Did all of their diamonds come from an ethical source? Were there, in other words, did every single person who dug up a diamond that went to Brad Pitt, did they all actually want to do that? Because if there's any, like, bad labor involved in that, Brad, you better get down with that and crush up them diamonds on the internet, man. Come on.
And let's not even talk about the alleged forced labor by the Uyghurs in China, 2 million of them. And presumably Nike is benefiting from that kind of labor. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it seems to me that the woke NBA would be looking into that. Thank you so much for the call. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Dr. Fauci now says that there's no problem wearing a second mask. He thinks it's a good idea. There's no scientific evidence that suggests it's better, but it still thinks it's a good idea. From January the 30th, he's said a number of things that have been inconsistent or confusing or...
Are we safe to fly? Many of us are going on trips. We're all going to the Super Bowl. Is that safe?
Yeah, yes, of course. And I think I'm glad you asked me that question right now.
January 30.
Now, the risk to Americans is really low.
January 30, 2020.
And it could really explode into something much bigger. I hope it doesn't. We're preparing ourselves for that. But right now, you're right. The risk of getting into a real problem with influenza is much greater than the risk of this new virus. And the
risk of getting into a problem with the influenza is greater than the risk of this virus, said Dr. Fauci on January the 30th. Of 2020.
Cells for that. But right now, you're right. The risk of getting into a real problem with influenza is much greater than the risk of this new virus. And
this, by the way, is the day before Donald Trump restricted travel to China.
United States.
There have been estimates of hundreds of thousands of people in the U.S. who could die, or in the worst.
And recall that Peter Navarro says that the person who was the most opposed to restricting travel to China, Dr. Fauci.
Case scenario, millions. Can you tell the American people that that is possible?
You know, it's possible because when you do a model, you have a worst case scenario, the best case scenario, and the reality is how you react to that will depend where you're going to be on that curve.
So, Dr. Fauci, it's Saturday morning in America. People are waking up right now with real concerns about this. They want to go to malls and movies, maybe the gym as well. Should we be changing our habits, and if so, how?
No, right now, at this moment, there is no need to change anything that you're doing on a day-by-day basis. Right now, the risk is still low, but this could change.
We have to make sure we don't forget that the most important thing is to keep this 6-foot physical distance from individuals.
Dr. Fauci, if the most vulnerable group is the elderly right now, we're seeing all of these school closures around the country. Is that the right move for children and families?
Well, I think it should be done in a proportionate way. And I think what's going on right now is generally an appropriate approach.
As a fundamental principle, I do agree that we should try as best as we possibly can to get the children back to school,
because of the well-documented, secondary, downstream ripple effects that are negative, particularly on parents and on the children when you keep them out of schools.
Well, Martha, that's a good question. We get asked it all the time. We say it not being facetiously as a soundbite or anything, but, close the bars and keep the schools open is what we really say. Obviously, you don't have one size fits all, but as I said in the past, and as you accurately quoted me, the default position should be to try as best as possible within reason to keep the children in school or to get them back to school.
The Swedes came out with a paper, and also a paper from NIH grantees from La Jolla just came out in the journal Cell, showing the same thing, that in individuals who were infected and recovered, they had T-cell responses, but importantly, there was T-cell reactively also detected in non-exposed individuals, which means that maybe there's some memory from other coronaviruses that are benign cold viruses that you were exposed to that might, and I say might, explain why some people, even children, might be protected, that they had exposure that's not measured in antibody, but measured by T cells.
There's also the pre-existing immunity of those who have cross-reactivity, which is about a third of the public in many estimates from studies, which would actually get you to about 5%.
I'd like to talk to you about that also, because there was a study that recently came out that pre-existing immunity to coronaviruses that are common cold do not cross-react with the COVID-19.
You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. The better part of valor is that when you're out and you can't maintain that 6-foot distance, to wear some sort of facial covering.
A lot of folks are hearing now about double masking, wearing 2 masks or trying to get one of those N95 medical grade masks. Do you believe that that's advisable and makes a difference?
It likely does, because, this is a physical covering to prevent droplets and virus to get in. So if you have a physical covering with one layer, you put another layer on, it just makes common sense. If you really want to have an extra little bit of protection, maybe I should put 2 masks on. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's no data that indicates that that is going to make a difference. If a physical barrier with 1 mask works, it makes common sense that 2 layers or 3 layers, and you should have a double layer mask and 1 mask anyway. But if you want to put an extra mask on, there's nothing wrong with that.
Clear as mud. When we come back, Jimmy, South Carolina, Robert, Greenville, South Carolina, Russ, Atlanta, Georgia, Ron, Middletown, Connecticut. Gentlemen, do not leave town. Joy Behar says it's perfectly okay for the Biden administration to ask for questions in advance. The Biden administration has been doing that. And the White House reporters are complaining. The left-wing reporters, the ones that went after Donald Trump, they're complaining the Biden administration is asking for questions in advance. And Joy Behar says, what's the problem? Can you imagine if Donald Trump had asked for questions in advance? Could we have your questions in advance? The Trump administration wants questions. What are they lying about? It's insurrection. That would have been another article for impeachment, right? All of that and more, 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Have you ever heard the expression, I'm free, white, and over 21? Nina hadn't heard that expression before. I said, you don't watch old movies, do you? She said, no. I'll tell you about that when we come back. Stick around. I'm Larry Elder.
This is Lon Heachen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. The Biden administration announced in their first week that the U.S. is rejoining the World Health Organization. But the WHO is a flawed group, one that has performed poorly while the world has struggled with COVID-19. Early on, the group was far too deferential to China, even parroting Beijing's early claim that the virus could not be transmitted between humans. Since then, an independent panel concluded that the WHO dithered in its response, waiting too long to declare an international emergency. All the while, the WHO has continued to block Taiwan's participation because of political objections from the Chinese government, despite the fact that the world has much to learn from Taiwan's exceptional response to the virus. Before rejoining the WHO, we should have demanded some accountability and reform from the group for the $400 million in taxpayer dollars we send to it each year. It looks like we'll keep on writing blank checks to the WHO, which they are more than happy to keep cashing. I'm Lan Hee Chen.
The Pepperdine School of Public Policy, America's unique graduate program for leaders. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
What we are heading towards will be one of the most violent decades in American history. Why? Massive wealth and income inequality is one reason, because of the lockdowns and because of leaders that do not care about the well-being of their subjects. A war on police officers and a war on law enforcement, and quite honestly, a war on the law in general. And also an unmanaged transition from the corporate boardroom industrial economy to the digital economy. When you have this much economic dislocation, when you have this much disruption, do not be surprised when murder rates and homicide rates skyrocket. New York City is becoming a place that is completely unrecognizable. Just some of my buddies in Chicago that I grew up with said they do not feel comfortable going to downtown Chicago. They feel their car will almost assuredly be carjacked, or whatever is in their car will be stolen. When I was in San Francisco, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, parked on the side of the street, nice part of San Francisco, everything we had in there completely and totally stolen. Windows smashed, all of our stuff stolen. Do not be surprised when civil society starts to unravel, when you attack every single core institution that keeps civil society together.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Biden has signed an executive order mandating you must wear a mask while on federal property, indoors, with other people. Is Jen Psaki a super spreader? Now, this will never come up. Oh, no one at the New York Times, nobody's going to write a scathing article in the Atlantic about Jen Psaki's apparent refusal to wear a mask. And I've been going through this in my head. I'm thinking, well, maybe she had COVID. All right, well, that doesn't matter. They've told us it doesn't matter if you've had COVID. You still have to wear your mask and social distance. Yeah, but she's got the antibodies. That doesn't matter. You can get it again. We don't know how long you can have the antibodies.
Larry, Joe in Prescott Valley. I just heard on the Jennifer Horn show there that the LA City Council has voted to give the retail workers a $5 raise. And they were discussing the unintended consequences of this. Larry, when the Kroger CEO is saying, here's what's going to happen if you force us to do this, you no longer have unintended consequences. He's telling you what the hell's going to happen. And on top of that, Larry, tell me, the city council person said that these people deserve it because they're putting their lives at risk. They are essential workers. Larry, how does $5 an hour give them less risk and less likely to put their lives at risk during this time? I'm not sure I understand the logic here. They must have gone to the Nancy Pelosi School of Decision Making. Anyway, have a great day.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. That's right. The Ralph's and Food for Less in Long Beach are going to be closed. They are owned by Kroger because the city has mandated that the workers be paid an extra $4 an hour for the next 4 months. Now, these were stores that were already on the margin already, says Kroger, and now they're going to close them. L.A. may be the next city to do it. City wants to add an additional $5 an hour to essential workers' paychecks. So I guess Long Beach did not send the message to L.A., or L.A. did not get the message, but L.A. is now not just doing $4 an hour, they want to do $5 an hour. So if it's a stupid idea in Long Beach, it's really going to be a stupid idea out here in L.A. Now that's leading to the growing calls for the governor to be recalled. At one time, he was the most popular governor in California in the last maybe 50 years. His numbers have fallen. You know they're in trouble when the Gavin Newsom team refers to the recall effort as a coup and says that part of those involved in the coup are, quote, white nationalists, close quote. There's a big white nationalist constituency here in California, you know. Jimmy is in South Carolina. Jimmy, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling.
Hey, brother, I sure did enjoy your show.
Thank you.
I got a problem with the Senate. Why? How can they do what they do to the Republicans, and Republicans cannot do anything to them? What is the problem?
Jimmy,
they have been cited. Yes, sir.
No, go ahead, Jimmy. I'm sorry.
They have been cited many times of, I'm going to take Trump out tonight. I'm going to take him out and beat the hell out of it. Why? It doesn't make any sense.
You know,
they can prosecute them, but they can't be prosecuted. You know what I'm saying?
Of course I know what you're saying. We've been talking about it all week. You've got Chuck Schumer outside the Supreme Court, all but threatening Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. You've got Maxine Waters saying, gather around Trump cabinet members, let them know they're not welcome anywhere anymore. Yeah, we've played that whole montage of Democrats talking about fight, fight, fight. Eric Swalwell had a relationship with a Chinese spy. He hasn't lost his committee positions on the Intel Committee. Adam Schiff, routinely lying about the evidence he's seen, tons of evidence, hasn't lost his committee positions. Alcee Hastings was a federal judge, was prosecuted for accepting a bribe, $150,000 bribe, was found not guilty, but the 11th Circuit said that he had fabricated evidence and recommended that he be removed from the bench, which the Democrat-led House of Representatives did, 413-3, passing 17 articles of impeachment, the most they've ever done, 8 of which were voted on, convicted by the Senate, and he was thrown off the bench. And then the man played the race card, claimed that he was a victim of a racial persecution, and got elected to House, and is sitting on the House Rules Committee, and is twice voted to impeach President Trump. Ilhan Omar hasn't lost her committee assignments. Jews have brainwashed the world. Jewish lawmakers have dual loyalties. Hasn't lost any committee assignments. Chuck Schumer's 1974 racist scheme to get rid of black people out of an area in Flatbush. What's that? You didn't know about it? I've done a video about it. Go on YouTube. I've written about it. A guy named Jay Homnick, who was there when this racist scheme was hatched, has written about it. American Spectator. Articles called Race to the Top. Google it. I've interviewed him a couple times on my program. Google that. Nobody seems to care. A scheme to get rid of 2 buildings of black people out of a neighborhood because of racist neighbors, and Chuck Schumer was down with it and pulled it off, except he didn't anticipate they'd be able to raise enough money to move back into these much nicer places now. 3-week quick start is just $19.95. If you're having difficulty with your back, your knee, your hip, your foot, from exercise, or just getting older? Consider the 3-week quick start, discounted to only $19.95. The docs who formulated Relief Factor selected the 4 best 100% drug-free ingredients, each of which deals with pain from a different metabolic pathway. So that sounds like you. It's only less than $1 a day to see if we can get you out of pain. After that, less than the cost of a cup of coffee a day to stay out of pain. Just go to relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com, or call 800-500-8384, 800-500-8384.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Let me ask you, just to speculate, what do you suppose the Democrats are even hoping to do by impeaching Trump after? I mean, many of us really don't understand why they would do something this crazy.
The reason they have to try so hard to sully Trump, even though he's no longer in the Oval Office, is because they recognize the enduring power and magnetism, both of Trump as an individual, but even more importantly, of the America First movement, that something was aroused in this country. And even though Trump didn't prevail on November 3rd, guess what? Lots of House members did, state houses all over the country did. So I think they sense and realize, the Democrats, that there is a growing movement, and they are trying to thwart it by doing the best they can to vilify Donald Trump. And they think that if they can sort of beat him and bury him even out of office, now, again, I believe this is going to backfire on them, but I think this is their strategy, that they believe that they can effectively diffuse our movement. And that's part of why he has to fight as well.
It kind of reminds me of Abbott and Costello meets Dracula or something like that. Like they're trying to put a stake through his heart because they don't believe that, you know, if he's dead, he's really dead. We've got to put a stake through his heart. We've got to do anything we can do. And there's something comedic about it in a way, because Trump is like that. You keep, you know, like you just said, you know, Mayweather. I mean, he is someone that you can never count him out. There's never been anyone like him. And I think they're scared to death, and they're just trying to do everything. They're throwing a kitchen sink at him, hoping somehow to succeed.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
You know, I've often said, almost every day, in fact, that the left destroys everything it touches, and that while conservatives build and liberals build, the left destroys, which is a fact. But there is one thing that the left does manufacture: hysteria. Nobody does it as well. And that's all this is about. The president denied for 77 days that he lost. So what? He's not allowed the freedom. If you think it's absurd, he doesn't have the freedom to say absurdities. Did he do anything to block the next president from coming in? Did he bring in armed forces? Who brought in armed forces to Washington, D.C.? And why are they still...
Larry, normally I would say Larry Elder for governor. However, I would miss you on the radio. What's going to go on there? So I would care to nominate Rick Grenell for governor of California. Love the show, Larry.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. I can tell you that I have been approached by some serious people to run for governor. And most recently, somebody that you know quite well has approached me. And I said, I subscribe to the Walter Cronkite philosophy. I'd love to serve. I hate to have to run. I just don't believe I have the stomach, the temperament, the personality, the drive, the willingness to deal with these doofi in Sacramento for the next several years of my life. Have I exhausted all of my excuses yet? Anyway, thank you very much for that. It's very flattering, but no, I'm not gonna run. I would miss being on the radio as well. Now, the experts are just flummoxed at why the COVID cases are falling so dramatically. Here's a headline in the Daily Mail. Why are COVID cases plummeting? New infections have fallen 45% in the U.S. and 30% globally in the past 3 weeks. And it's way too early to give credit to the Biden administration, isn't it? Quote, hospitalizations have fallen a whopping 26% since they peaked most recently on January 12. Officials say the drop is likely due to a number of people who had the virus than official counts suggest. As many as 90 million people and fewer are traveling over the holidays. Officials say that it can't be the vaccine. That's too soon. Quote, so the question remains, why are cases falling so fast? Public health officials say the explanation is likely a combination of a number of things. Most notably, a whole bunch of people very likely had coronavirus with no symptoms or mild symptoms, and as a result, there are far more people that already have the antigens than thought. Quote, experts believe there is a severe undercount in the number of people who've already contracted it, and it presents a problem to determine exactly what the level of lethality is. Quote, when the combined number of people who've had the vaccination comes out, roughly a third of the population may have already had some level of immunity against the virus, much higher than people thought before. Now, I remember a gentleman said that something like that was going to happen and that the virus would begin to go away. Who said that?
Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat, as the heat comes in. Typically, that will go away in April. I've spoken to President Xi. They're getting it more and more under control. So I think that's a problem that's going to go away. But when you have 15 people, and the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to zero, that's a pretty good job we've done. It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear. And from our shores, it could get worse before it gets better. It could maybe go away. We'll see what happens. You have to be calm. It'll go away. It will go away. Just stay calm. It will go away. We need a little separation until such time as this goes away. It's going to go away. It's going to go away. It will go away. It is going away. And it will go away, and we're going to have a great victory. It's going to go away, hopefully at the end of the month, and if not, it hopefully will be soon after that.
But hasn't your thinking on this evolved?
It is going away. I didn't say it, I said it's going away, and it is going away.
You were saying things like, I think it's a problem that's going to go away within a couple of days.
It will go away. But I think what happens is it's going to go away. This is going to go away. It's going to go. It's going to leave. It's going to be gone. It's going to be eradicated. It might take longer. It might be in smaller sections. It won't be what we had.
Dr. Ali Muqad, professor of health medics at the University of Washington, said there are a number of reasons for the decline. One of the reasons for the sharp drop, if not the primary driver, are the vaccines. But the number of people vaccinated are nowhere near the 65% required for herd immunity. Experts then say the decline is likely due to other reasons, such as the higher number of people with natural immunity, end of quote. Now, I was saying to Nina the other night, you're kind of cocky, aren't you? You're acting free, white, and over 21. She said, what? I said, you never heard that expression before? She said, no. I said, you don't watch very many old movies, do you? She said, no.
Just a minute, Win. You needn't worry about me. I'm free, white, and 21, or almost. And I'll go on loving you from here on out. Or until I stop loving you. But nobody owes a thing to Kitty Foyle.
You can't stop me from seeing Taylor. Neither you nor Paul. I've got a right to happiness just like anybody else. I'm free, white,
and 18.
What's wrong with being 18?
Since I was a kid, I'd say to myself, I'll go in there and I'll tell him this or that and I'll tell him straight. And I'd get all primed to go in there and say, I'm free, white, and 21 and I'm going to lead my own life. And he'd look at me and look through me. And my throat would tighten.
For some reason, it's not an expression you hear very often anymore. Don't know why.
I do hope he's free for tonight.
Free, white, and 45.
Now, honey, maybe your father's right.
Oh, you don't want me around, is that it? Afraid I'll cramp your style with your darling Mabel?
I've heard enough of this. You get some clothes on.
I don't care what either of you say. I'm free, white, and 21. I love to dance, and I'm going to dance. And if you fire me from this show, I'll get a job in another one.
Oh. Look, Cass, I'm free, white, and 21. I'm going to stay here whether you like it or not. I'm going to learn to fly, and when I do, I'm going to fly the pants over you.
A lot of movies need to be canceled.
I don't mean to be prying, but if your mother were still alive... Dear Aunt Celia, I'm free, white, and 21.
Sound in wind and limb.
Shut up. And I know my own mind.
Once a drunk, always a drunk.
Now listen, Tim. You're free, white, and 21. You can do as you choose.
I don't know why I have to consult you about my friends. I'm free, white, and 21.
My name is Danny Churchill. I'm from New York. Free, white, and lonesome.
I feel so guilty, dragging you into this.
You didn't drag me into anything. I'm free, white, and old enough. Come back to stay.
I'm trying to get her to, Judge. Because she's got some mighty stubborn ideas.
My foreman doesn't approve of my actions.
Well, you're free, white, and long about 21.
Yesterday, had a party to prove it.
And a few hysterics.
Josie, you don't act up, do you?
Taylor, have you been playing the market again?
Well, what about that? I'm free, white, and 21.
That white privilege didn't kick in for Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's been kicked off of her committee assignments, and she's free, white, and over 21. But that didn't just kind of help her out any, did it? Now, for years I've been telling you about Relief Factor. Over 100 million people might be struggling with some kind of pain. Pete and Seth Talbot, the father-son owners of Relief Factor, are on a mission. They want to double the number of people they get out of pain this year. And I believe they'll do it. Here's their deal. If you're struggling with back, neck, shoulder, hip, or knee pain, even general muscle aches and pain, I suggest you order their 3-week Quick Start, still discounted to only $19.95. That's less than $1 a day to see if we can get you out of pain. After that, less than the cost of a cup of coffee a day to stay out of pain. Over 70% of the people who order the 3-week Quick Start go on to order more. Give your body what it needs to heal itself. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, or call 800-500-8384. That's 800-500-8384.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
We've seen the sausage machine from the inside. Okay. Your verdict on the first 15 days?
Full fail. Absolute, total, utter fail. Economically fail. In terms of PR, fail. Just a totally pathetic 2 weeks. The fact that Biden's big vaccine plan literally didn't exist. There's no COVID plan. He already said that that there's nothing they can do. So disaster there. Disaster on the Keystone Pipeline. His climate czar is John Kerry, who is literally like a cartoon character of a bad politician. He's the climate czar and has a private jet at the same time. Doesn't.
But it's okay. He said when he flew to Iceland to get the award, he said today, But somebody like me has to have a private jet. I'm going to use that excuse. If I get a private jet, I'm going to say, but someone like me has to have a private jet, Boris. Don't you agree?
He's so fancy, and he's achieved so much in his life. He's been such a high achieving person. You know, after serving in Vietnam, and thanks for his service, buying someone else's medals to throw out, okay,
and then testifying against our nation and the Vietnam War in the Senate.
Being a totally useless senator, a horrible candidate for president, Iran's best friend as Secretary of State, can't even ride a bicycle normally.
Oh, but hang on, Boris. He did marry up.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Manchin comes on last night and he says very reassuring thing. He's not going to screw with the bird rule, $15 minimum wage.
yes, Mr. Elder. This is Clay from Rome, Georgia. And I've noticed that it seems like the more crowded people are, the more likely they are to vote Democrat. Which means the more control they want the government to have over their lives. I don't quite understand it, but I heard a phrase from Robert Heinlein. He said that human beings, any species that you put too many in too close space together will drive them crazy. Human beings are the only species that does this to itself. I guess maybe they're driving them crazy being so close together, and that's why they're all voting Democrat. Love this show.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Well, New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the Union. It's a left-wing state, isn't it? We were talking about the allegations about election fraud. There is an article in Red State, headline 2020 Presidential Election Lawsuits, The Facts. We have it up on LarryElder.com and looks at all of the lawsuits that have been filed in connection with this case. There have been 75 so far relevant to the case. 8 have been withdrawn or consolidated. 25 have been stopped from proceeding. 42 are still being decided, and they link to them, so you can go on and look at all these cases and find out exactly where they're standing, what their statute is, by going to my website, LarryElder.com, and you'll look under news on the show, and you'll see the column. The Zip poll question yesterday: do you believe that Marjorie Taylor Greene should be expelled from Congress or at least lose her committee assignments? 13% of you said yes, 87% said no. Here's the one for tonight. Do you personally know anybody affected by the cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline? Either yes or no. In order to participate, you must be a member of the Zip community. Go to the App Store and look it up under Zip Poll USA, and be sure and use my code SAGE, S-A-G-E, in order to respond. Joy Behar says she's perfectly okay with reporters giving the Biden administration the questions in advance, something that the Trump administration would not have been accorded on. Now, Jen Psaki, the press secretary, doubled down on Biden's comment that the majority of FBI agents are decent. Majority?
One more question, if I could. Sorry, about the president's comments last night as he was paying his respects to the FBI agents that lost their lives or were injured. He said, by and large, the vast majority of these men and women are decent, honorable people. What did he mean by that, the vast majority part?
That's exactly what he meant.
Vast majority? I'm Larry Elder. We got a country to save.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe.